Hi everyone, we're embarking on a new journey, and this is my first video. Today, I'm going to tell the story of a man who all his life didn't know he was part of a TV show. The whole world is watching him, but he is oblivious until he discovers the truth. So, how did he realize this frightening truth? And will he be able to escape it? Let's find out. Part 1. A crack in a perfect world. George seemed like an ordinary man living an ordinary life. One sunny morning, he woke up as usual when his alarm went off. Looking in the mirror, he smiled and said to himself, "Good morning, George." He repeated the same words every morning, but he never questioned why he did it. He stuck to his routines. He drank his coffee in the same cafe, walked down the same road, greeted people he recognized every day. Most of his day was spent at work. At the insurance company where he worked, he chatted with his colleagues and ate his favorite sandwich during his lunch break. In the evening, he would spend time with his wife Elaine, watch certain programs on television, and then go to sleep. His life was in a perfect cycle, as if everything was in order, but that day, something was different. On his way to work, during his usual morning walk, he noticed something falling rapidly in the sky. At first he thought it was just a bird, but when he got closer to the ground, he saw that it was a spotlight. It had a small inscription on it: "Stage Light Dux 312, do not remove." Part 2. First step into reality. When George arrived at work, he told his colleagues about what had happened in the morning, but everyone took it as something ordinary. "Yes, George, strange things happen in the city. He probably fell off a billboard," said his friend Mark. George found this explanation plausible, but his uneasiness did not go away. That day, he felt that something had changed. People seemed strangely attentive to him. A woman passing by even whispered, "Is the camera angle okay?" George was surprised, but he ignored it. In the evening, he was sitting with Elaine watching the news on television. Suddenly, the screen flashed for a second and a man shouted, "George, it's all a lie." But within seconds, the screen went back to normal. Elaine noticed the puzzled look on George's face. "Has something happened?" she asked. "I think the TV made a mistake," George said, but inside he was confused. Before he went to sleep, he kept thinking about the light he had seen in the morning, the man on TV, and the strange behavior of the people. But he still couldn't put it all together. George thought it strange that a theatre light could fall from the sky, but he didn't think much of it. Maybe there's some construction work going on, he thought. He shook his head and kept walking. But deep down inside, he began to feel uncomfortable. Part 3. Breaking point. As the days passed, George grew restless. One day on his way to work, he stood on a corner, and suddenly the whole city seemed to freeze. People had stopped moving. Then, suddenly someone shouted, 3, 2, 1, and on! Everyone kept moving. George's heart began to race. He thought he was imagining what he was seeing, but it couldn't be a joke. He decided to see his psychologist that day. His psychologist, Dr. Kramer, listened to George's feelings and gave him suggestions to calm down. Sometimes people can feel lost when they pay too much attention to the world. "Don't worry, George, it's all right." George seemed to relax, but deep down he knew something was wrong. Until the next day, on the subway, he looked out the window. In the reflection of the glass, he saw a man behind him, holding a script in his hand that read, "George looks around in a daze." That's when he realized the truth. I'm in a television show. Part 4. Escape plan. As soon as he left the psychologist, he started running. Everything was a game. He was living in a fiction. People didn't think he was real. The cops were after him, but why? Why were they so afraid of him? When he ran through the streets, "George, please, stop!" he heard his psychologist shouting. But George was not going to stop. A man questioning his own reality, he kept running. There had to be a way out. perhaps a point where it all ended, and finally he came to a large door. He read the sign, "Exit," and was filled with hope. But just as he was about to open the door, a police officer gave him a tranquilizer injection. Everything went black. We're at part 5, captivity. When George opened his eyes, he was tied to a chair. A tall, well-dressed man stood before him. "George, you are a sick man," he said. "You are detached from reality. You are safe here." "You can't fool me! You've turned my life into a show!" George screamed. The door opened and Elaine came in. She had tears in her eyes. She came quietly to George and whispered, "It's all true. Your life is a television show, but I'm going to get you out of here." Just then, the security guards came in and took Elaine away. Tears welled up in George's eyes. Part 6, escape. When George was freed from his ropes, he decided to look for Elaine instead of running away. He hurried along the corridor and finally found her in a small room, tied to a chair. As he untied her ropes, the door opened, and Lucas and the security guard stood there. "You can't get out of here," Lucas said in a calm voice. "This is your life, George. You're nothing out there." George's eyes flashed with anger. "I'm a human being, not a puppet." At that moment, the voices of the audience rose from the big screen. Millions of people were shouting, "Free them!" Protests spread, sponsors began to pull out. Lucas clenched his fist and sighed. "Okay, George, you've won. But remember, it's going to be harder outside than inside." George and Elaine held hands and opened the giant door to the studio. They squinted out and stepped into the real world for the first time. Part 7. Happy ending. George and Elaine made a new start in the real world. The real world was hard, but being free was better than anything. George was now free and living a real life. And most importantly, there was no script. Thanks for watching. Keep practicing your English every day. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Did you enjoy this one? Let me know in the comments. See you next time.